pleasure to recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Bilirakis, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for holding this hearing. I really thank the witnesses for being here, their patience. Madam Chair, what I want to do, first of all, I'm the co-chair of the Rare Disease Caucus, and lowering prescription drug prices and increasing patient choice without impeding research and development of breakthrough cures and treatments is very important to me. Obviously, it's important to everyone. We all agree on that. Mr. Ippolito, I have some prepared questions, but let me ask you this. What is your position? I know what your position is on H.R. 3, but how can we lower prescription drug prices? Is it through competition? If you can give me a statement on that, I'd appreciate it. How would you do it if you were in our position?
Well, I think I'd focus primarily on the incentives that the people making the drugs have. Namely, what kind of pricing incentives do they have, and then what kind of research and development incentives do they have? And so when I look at exactly what you guys are talking about in terms of reforming the Part D benefit design, I see a very good combination, at least in concept. There's details to be hashed out. In concept, there's a really good reform there where we say we're no longer going to engage in this behavior where we have this terrible benefit design where these really high list price Jerry was talking about, in large part, or at least in part, can be traced back to this incentive that's in this benefit, which is jack up your list price as high as you possibly can so that you can offload all this cost onto the federal government. And patients are stuck there paying these massive out-of-pocket costs. And so when I look at that benefit redesign, I see a really nice shift towards a much more sustainable program. I see much better incentives facing insurers who have to care a lot more about the costs of the drugs that they're providing. And we're now knocking down this idea that we're just going to get away with high prices, not because we have some great value that we're proposing, but because it's a way to take advantage of a benefit design. So I think I'd look at the incentives that are facing the market actors here, and I think the Part D redesign is a really good example of that.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, and now to H.R. 3. And I know that I'm just following up on what the members, some of the members have asked. I'll give you some more time. Do the economic incentives in H.R. 3 signal to manufacturers to invest in rare diseases or lower cost follow-on products?
Yeah, so this is a good question. The composition of drugs, we don't just care about how many drugs or how much money we spend on research. We care about what we get out of it. So we care about the composition of drugs and what kind of treatments are we getting. And so one of the things that you do need to think about is how are different drugs going to be affected differently under this proposal. And so one of the things that I would certainly emphasize is that this price setting arrangement would only apply to single source drugs, only apply to drugs that do not have competition. Drugs that are less likely to have competitions tend to be drugs with smaller market shares, or market sizes. And so if you are particularly concerned about rare diseases, that is something that I would emphasize, that if you expect it's going to be a longer time before you get that second entrant, well, then you're going to be eligible for this rate restriction for a very long time. So it may actually depress the incentives there particularly.
Thank you for your input. Again, the Commerce Department found that the price controls in foreign countries already suppress worldwide private research and development investment by 11 to 16% annually, leading to fewer new medicines launched each year. Under this price control plan, H.R. 3, would the U.S. remain the leader in biomedical R&D? If not, which countries would take the lead in biopharmaceutical research, in your opinion?
So there's two things. There's where is this kind of research and investment taking place, and then there's which market is it aimed at. So right now, there's a good and bad thing, which is that we are the biggest market for pharmaceuticals in the world, period. I believe IQVIA puts us at spending about the same amount as the rest of the top 10 spending countries in total. So we are likely going to still be a large spender in terms of pharmaceuticals, but it is entirely possible as we have other large countries like China and India becoming wealthier and so on, that they become more of the target markets for these kinds of things, or perhaps the EU as their policies evolve.
Thank you very much. And Madam Chair, under your leadership, your capable leadership, we've already proven it early this year, we can come up with a good bill. and we can all agree on it, and of course, it must pass the Senate, otherwise it's not going to do any good. So, I hope that we make some progress and get something out by the end of the year. So I really appreciate you holding this hearing, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields.